a community member who's not part of UCSB, and I came here because I'm really interested in this topic, and I'm really interested in how to bring this into communities in a larger way rather than just in the universities. I really loved what you were saying about bringing action and positivity rather than just always being critiquing and against something. I work in the arts, and to me, arts is very transformational. And I think even, well, especially in where I'm working in this town, there's a lot of embedded social structures around nonprofits and things, and that's a whole other conversation. But I'm just interested in how it's overwhelming when I start to think about like all the things. It's overwhelming. And so it would be really lovely to have something, actionable to bring into the community there, even if they're just small steps. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
So when I moved to, I think someone mentioned earlier that I was a graduate fellow for Antiracism, Inc. And I then got the job in Virginia. And I was like, how can I literally bring Antiracism, Inc. and everything I learned to this new site? And of course, I'm still in conversation with these amazing folks. But one thing that we always talk about is it's the social relationships that really, right? And people often talk about how it's they go to a community organizing meeting or they go to a coalition event because their friend invited them or the loved ones involved or something like that. And so I met there's another new faculty member, Megan McDowell, and the first week really it was during the orientation, and we both were really against. Institutional orientations are not very much fun. So we were both kind of the bad kids in the corner. And so we started talking, and we both came from prison abolitionist backgrounds. And so we were like, what can we do? So Megan talked about how she had read an article in the Virginia Pilot about, and it's the language of the state. Of course, the sheriff at the time, was not opposed to educational programming inside of the jail because it reduces recidivism, or all the language, the language that the state would use. And so we thought, okay, this is a new thing, this is weird, but how could we bring, because, usually we're on the other side, like burn it down, right? I mean, we're not going into the place, we're sort of trying to stop, part of the work we were doing with Antiracism, Inc. was, Poetic was fighting the gang injunction, there was, the North Santa Barbara County Jail Project, ICE Detention Center. So, we're used to sort of the other side of things. So we're like, we could go in and try, see what we can do and try to build. And so we really wanted to approach, how can we, because there's great critiques of prison education programs because they have a very liberal framework that really does sort of rehearse the language of the state. So sort of the romance of education, the language of redemption and rehabilitation. There's a great piece in Lateral by Jillian Harkins and Erica Miners about sort of a critique of neoliberal, prison and, college and prison programs. So we knew the critique, and again, it's sort of we can make the critique, but we wanted to see what we could do, right? To kind of explore. Teaching a class in the jail from an abolitionist perspective for its, generative possibilities, not just the critique we had of, liberal education programs inside of jails and prisons. And so, fast forward to now, we have a robust program, and part of that is the arts. So we have a music director, art classes, creative writing, but it's all taught through this critical stance toward the state. And so I don't think that really gets at your question, but I think for me, what I took from Antiracism, Inc. was one, that it's all about having conversations and building relationships and figuring out, right, not just what you stand against, but what you stand for, right? And then going from there.
I just wanted to add, this slide that we had about decolonizing, and thank you for coming, nice to see you, about decolonizing consciousness. So this point about the struggle over the definition and perception of reality. The authors in that piece go on to say, you know, do we imagine ourselves living in a country that's fair, where there's justice and equality for all? Or do we understand and live in a reality where, right, xenophobia exists, a white supremacist society that was built upon the exploitation, right, settler colonialism, et cetera, et cetera. So depending on how we are, right, thinking, right, there's an opening to look around where we live. So what are the issues in Santa Barbara County? What are people on the ground doing already, right, in relation to those particular issues? And then how can I get involved and engaged with them and then continue to build? One of the things that, again, both Lipsitz and Adams and Salter in their pieces are identifying is that, you know, and I think it's important to note, Lipsitz argues that it's not just sort of a race-based organizing coalitions and so on, but everyone understands that the kinds of issues that we are confronting are race-bound, as well as they're bound by gender, sexuality, citizenship, and so on. So as we start small, again, looking at what's happening in our literal backyard, then we begin to see these connections between other kinds of struggles and how we can then